slide.
Yes, again and again. Good afternoon, my dear scholars, professors, ABEI members, and audience. Good evening, everyone who is not in Brazil, but abroad, in Ireland, in Argentina, in France, everywhere. I think we have a huge audience today. So we are back again to continue celebrating Ireland in contemporary times in terms of literature, culture, and film studies. To start, I cannot miss the chance of paraphrasing Samuel Johnston by saying, when a man is tired of Ireland, he is tired of life, for there is in Ireland all that life can afford. Those who are involved with Irish studies and those who are attending this series of lives are able to recognize how rich Irish culture is. The more you investigate its past and present, the more you realize how Ireland has become an increasingly diverse country and how this diversity has affected, created, and challenged different experiences of Irish society. It's very important for us to know how Irish artists, filmmakers, poets, playwrights feel about the changes they are experiencing. We know that Ireland is traditionally a country of emigration, but rapid immigration occurred during the economic boom when the country became considerably more diverse in terms of national and ethnic origin. Increasing diversity and attitudes to ethnic diversity differ across social groups and have challenged existing ideas about national identity and culture. Our recent studies consider how the newness immigration in Ireland have affected the arts in general from 2008 up to the present time. I think it's worth telling you who were not here a few weeks ago, since the beginning of lives, that we have interviewed here relevant figures of Irish scenario in terms of diplomacy, poetry, films, photography, and music. It was remembering Derek Heary, Jessica Traynor, poet Giselle Wolkoff, Nikki Kelly, Liz Gill, Alan Gilson, Elise O'Sullivan, and James Spalding. James Spalding came first because he took part in our Bloomsday in June. As you can see, we have discussed so far about the different areas of literature, film studies, and culture, and we still have so much to add in our project. This is why it will continue up till December. Next week, for example, we have a famous historian writer, Professor Dermot Cogg from Cork University, then a writer of Irish cinema, a writer and a critic of Irish cinema, Professor Ruth Bartle from Trinity College, Dublin. And in the end of October, we will have Professor Stephanie Shivanta from Université Polytechnique Hauts-de-France. But today, we have a famous Irish singer, writer, composer, I can say, songwriter, and actor Ryan Shaughnessy. Ryan was born in 1992. He's still a baby. And Shiny, is it the way it pronounces?
Lochshiny.
Lochshiny, okay.
Yeah.
A small village in North County, Dublin, Ireland. Ryan portrayed Mark Hopping in the popular long-running Irish soap series Fair Sit from 2001-2010. He shot to fame in 2012 when he reached the live TV final of Britain's Got Talent. Incredibly, I was in London when Ryan performed his absolutely exquisite song called No Name. You really got right in everyone's heart at that time, Ryan. He also represented Ireland in the Eurovision Song Contest 2018 with the song Together, finishing 16th. Now, I leave the floor for you, Ryan, to say a few words, and then Sânio Santos, a PhD student on Irish cinema at the Federal University of Bahia, starts the interview. But to finish my talk here, I would like to thank you, Ryan, for having accepted our invitation. It's a pleasure to have you among us today.
Thank you so much. And that was a lovely introduction. I appreciate it. It's really nice to be asked to come and answer some questions that you might have on Irish culture, on my history, on the arts in Ireland in general. It's something that, being brought up in Ireland, I have a lot of pride for my country. So when Sânio asked me, he said, "Will you come and do this for me?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" And also, I'm at home a lot these days, as a lot of people are. So I have some time on my hands. So yeah, thank you so much for asking me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. So the first question that I would like to ask you is about your participation in The Voice of Ireland and in Britain's Got Talent, because some artists, they tend to be very negative when it comes to talent shows. But how do you feel about it? Like, how did this talent show support you during the first steps of your career?
Okay, so it all kind of began when I went on a vacation and a holiday with some friends, and I'd written the one song that a lot of people know me for, which is No Name. And I wrote it for my friends, and I said, what do you think of this? And they all really loved it. I hadn't shared it with anyone before. I didn't know what they would think, but they really liked it. So one of my friends said, "You have to do something with it. You must go on one of these TV shows, or you have to go on to something and display your talent." So my mother at the time said to me, she's like, "Oh, you should go on The Voice." But The Voice for me was a TV show. It had a new name because there was already a TV show in Ireland called You're a Star. And You're a Star winners never really succeeded past when they won. There was nothing really came. They might have done one single or two singles, and then there wasn't really much after that. So I said, I don't know if that's what I want to do. Probably not the show for me. But lo and behold, when your mother tells you to do something, you do it, right? And so my mother told me to go on this show, The Voice, and my friends told me you should go on Britain's Got Talent. So in the end, I had to choose which show I wanted to continue, because I started to do well in both shows. So it actually got to the point where contractually I was bound to both shows, which is Sony and Universal. So they're two rival companies, two rival record labels. So I needed to figure out a way that I could leave The Voice and go on and do Britain's Got Talent. So I went on to that show. I was able to display my own songwriting and my own art instead of singing a cover of a song, which I always felt was really important to me. I didn't want to go on a show and just sing regurgitated versions of pop songs. I wanted to display my songwriting. I wanted to go on as a songwriter, you know? So the Britain's Got Talent was the only show that was available to me that would let me do that. So in the end, I did fairly well out of it. But to answer your question, throughout the process, there wasn't really much support for the artists or the contestants on the shows. I feel now, looking back on it, that we were really just used as like props in a movie or something, you know, or you stand over there, you go over here, you say this, you say that, you know. And at the end, they're making a TV show. So that's what it's all about. That's what you sign up for when you go on to one of these shows. But my dream from doing Britain's Got Talent was to get a YouTube video that would go out on their YouTube channel, which had a lot of subscribers at the time. And then if that YouTube video was successful, it would get a lot of views. Maybe someone might see it and someone might recognize the talent. And then I'd be able to maybe get some work out of it. So that was my dream, was go on Britain's Got Talent and get a video on YouTube, because I had kind of seen in 2012 that that's where everything was going, you know. Things were going onto YouTube. It was turning into like the digital platforms were kind of taking off. You know, you had Twitter, Facebook, and these type of things. So I tried to control the social media as much as I could. But similarly to what you're asking, the aftercare. So as soon as the show ended, it was just over. That was it, you know. There was no real care afterwards. I was kind of rushed around to do interviews at different places, to go on different TV shows and things like that. And then I was signed with Sony, RCA in London. So I did a lot of work with them. I did my first album with them. And then I just realized the pressure was so much, and I hadn't come up for air in about 6 to 8 months. So I just needed to sit back for a while and just take a breath, and then realize what I really wanted to do as an artist, because I'd achieved that goal of getting the YouTube video. And I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm happy. I got the YouTube video. It's sitting there. I can sit back and relax for a while. So that was kind of how that process went with the TV shows.
Okay. So my next question is about Ireland has a solid tradition when it comes to music. Which Irish musicians have influenced you?
A lot of people in Ireland growing up, they're influenced by traditional music, and a lot of people grow into traditional playing families, like where everyone has an instrument. Someone plays the fiddle, someone plays the flute, someone plays the harmonica, someone plays the tin whistle. But in my family, we didn't really have that. We were all singers. So at Christmas time, we'd sing songs, and we'd get like a karaoke machine, and you know, we'd do things that way. And my dad and my uncle would have played a lot of guitar, and they were in a band together. So I would have kind of been influenced by the music they listened to, but they listened to a lot of American music. So they listened to the Eagles, you know, the Doobie Brothers, and my mother loved country music. So I was listening to country music, Shania Twain. We just listened to the radio when we were going into when we were driving around the car. The radio would be on, and it'd be country music or, you know, modern pop music. So it's only really in my later years that I really got a real appreciation for Irish music. I don't know if you know the artist Damien Dempsey. So he's an amazing Irish musician who can control a crowd. When he's a crowd, it's like going to mass. It's like a religious experience when he's performing. So that's he's a big artist that I really appreciate at the moment. And then throughout the years, there's just been a few different Irish people that have kind of taken me under their wing. Damien Rice, you know, Lisa Hannigan, what's his name? Mick Flannery. I love him as well. There's some Ireland has a really good culture of singer-songwriters, and I think every second person you meet is a singer or a musician or something, you know. It's like we've have a very lush, creative culture here, which is really special, and it's kind of allowed a lot of people to do what they love, you know. But it's kind of getting harder as the years go on because there's less funding, and there's less gigs. Well, I suppose at the moment it's quite difficult because there's no gigs. But yeah, as the years kind of go on, I kind of see that there's less and less people getting into music, which is kind of upsetting.
Okay, so this question is a bit tricky, actually, and it's hard to make this question, and it's going to be probably a bit difficult for you to answer it too, because, like, for example, we as researchers sometimes we overanalyze the materials, and sometimes the authors look at and let's say like, oh, I did not mean that, but like, how much Irishness is there in your music?
Okay, that's a really good question. I'd say not that much. You know, if I'm honest. But of course, there's Irishness in my music and in my voice and in my heart. There is Irishness, but because I've had a lot of influences from American singer-songwriters and, you know, English singer-songwriters. I was a big John Mayer fan growing up as a kid, you know, and Eric Clapton, John Martin, you know, Joni Mitchell and James Taylor. I would have loved all these musicians growing up. So I think I took on a bit more of an American influence. But I do have sometimes I revert to maybe like lilting with my voice, which is a very Irish thing to do. And you know, if I'm at a party or something, I'll play an Irish song and there'll be Irishness in there. But when it comes to the music that I release, a lot of it, I'd say that there could be like 10% Irishness in that music. Would you agree though? Would you, in your over-analyzing of my music, would you agree that there's not that much influence in there?
Yeah, that's hard because, for example, Civil War, when I was listening to the song and I was paying attention to the lyrics, I thought, oh, is it connected in some way because he's using these metaphors? Is it connected to the revolutions of Ireland during the period of the independence? Like, I kind of felt like it.
Okay, well, that's good because I didn't think that when I was writing the song. But what I have thought about it since, I think that song, what I find interesting about music sometimes when you write something, it takes on a new meaning later on. So for me, looking back on Irish Revolution stuff, when I hear that song, it does make me proud that I made it, you know? It's like reverse engineering, you know? So, but also like the war with, you know, Syria and Palestine, and Israel and everything that's happening over there. I could kind of visualize that during the writing process. So the song Civil War it's about the individual wars that happen in the world. So there could be wars on continents, but there can also be war within the self. So it can be everything in between. It can be a relationship, it can be a family dispute, it could be two football teams, you know, and in this world we'll always experience civil war at some point, and it's just about how we get over it and how we get through it. So that's kind of where that song came from. But it's funny how you say that it kind of, you were thinking, did it represent some of the Irish Civil War and kind of what happened in the north? So yeah, there can be some influence there as well, I suppose.
Okay, thank you.
Very subjective, isn't it?
Quite subjective, yeah. Music is, yeah.
Okay, so my third question is about, you have collaborations with Laura Elizabeth Hughes, and you know Tis McNamara too, and I believe you three are kind of similar when it comes to style, but how would you describe the Irish music scene nowadays?
I think there's a lot of changes happening in the Irish music scene. There's a lot of hip hop. There's a lot of just commercial pop music. So you have the likes of Ryan Mack, Josh Gray, which are friends of mine, Robert Grace. So these guys are quite, they're going down the very commercial pop route. And then you've got people like Laura Elizabeth Hughes, who is a really precious soul, and she pours every part of herself into her songs. And I think that's where I can relate with Laura a lot, because when we write together, we share everything, and we try to be as honest as we can in our songwriting. And then Tiz is a similar guy. So Tiz is out in Toronto at the moment, and when I went over there, I met up with Tiz and I met up with a guy called Johnny Shea, and we wrote a song about being away from Ireland, and it's called Guinness in a Glass Like That. So it's not released on YouTube, or sorry, on Spotify, but it's on YouTube. But the whole idea for the song was, we're three Irish guys who had to leave Ireland in order to succeed, in order to, to find new ways to express ourselves, because Ireland is such an expensive country at the moment. And if you want to be an artist living in Dublin, you have to be making a lot of money, because the rent prices are so high. There's not much governmental support there for Irish musicians. So a lot of people leave the country, and his is a perfect example. He left the country and he's doing better than ever. And I left the country many times, as you know. I've been through South America. I never went to Brazil, not yet, but I'm able to get out of the country in order to play music in different countries and stuff like that, which I'm very blessed to be able to do. But to go back to your question, there's a lot of commercial pop music kind of happening in Ireland at the moment. And it's very hard for the likes of Laura Elizabeth Hughes to break through that, to be able to get onto radio, to get onto different TV platforms and stuff like that, because it's all kind of controlled within the commercial pop unit at the moment, which is a little bit unnerving. It's more difficult for artists to break through that at the moment, even if the songs are great. And that's the problem. You could have a great song, really good artist, but unless you are part of this central crew of commercial pop artists, it's kind of hard to break through.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have researchers in our group that are studying hip hop, Irish hip hop.
Yeah, amazing.
Like Denise Chaila, you probably have heard about her.
Yeah. Denise Chaila is doing really good. Kojak. There's a group from the north. I can't remember the names now, but they are very Republican. These two artists, and they speak. All their songs are Oscuelga, so they're in Irish, and their fan base is a lot of Irish-speaking young people in Ireland, and their music is very Republican and anti-establishment. So they're doing a lot of great things at the moment. If I'll remember their name, just give me a few minutes and it'll come back to me. But it's a duo. They're a little bit like, have you ever heard of the Rubber Bandits?
Excuse me?
The Rubber Bandits. That's a group. They're a duo that kind of changed the music scene in Ireland. Maybe 10 years ago, they started creating parody music that was very anti-establishment. And they got a really good following. And now this group in the north of Ireland, they're a Belfast-based duo, and they're doing something very similar, which is great, especially at a time where culture is shifting and people are starting to kind of wake up to a lot of adversities and things like that are happening.
Okay, well, you are giving us a lot of nice information.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, so this question is actually about the support from the government, because there is an institution called Stream Ireland, and they provide support for the Irish cinema. And it's like basically most of the films that are produced in Ireland have the support from Screen Ireland.
Great.
And you recently participated in an event with the Department of Culture, Heritage, and I'm not sure, Guela.
Gael talked.
Well thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so at least it's close enough. So how are they supporting native young musicians? What do you think it needs to be done to develop Irish contemporary music?
Okay, so I was really lucky to be asked to be part of the initiative that the Department of Culture and the Gaeltacht started, which is great. It provides financial support as well as a bit of a platform so people can continue to work. But one problem that has persisted throughout this pandemic is we have a pandemic unemployment package, and it's around €350 per week. So any musician who was on this package has been able to receive it for the last 7 months or whatever it is. But they're after reducing that package now to around €200. So there are still a lot of musicians in Ireland who can't gig, can't work because everywhere is closed. The venues are closed. We're not allowed to congregate in areas and stuff like that due to the virus. But the governmental support, it's like they haven't even taken into consideration the music industry and the entertainment industry. So there are a lot of people in Ireland at the moment who aren't too happy about the reduction in the pandemic unemployment package, and also with the closures. It'd be quite easy, I think, in this country to open a venue safely and have social distancing in place just so musicians can get out and work. I have a lot of friends who are just guitar players. I'm quite lucky because I've got my record label, I've got my studio, I've got, I do production work, I do TV work, I do a lot of different things, but I've got some friends who are just straightforward guitar players or drummers or bass players that can't play and they can't work. So that's one side. I think the government, our current government at least, and this is not taken into consideration the departments, individual departments of culture and things like that, but our government as a whole aren't really addressing the issue at hand, which is vast unemployment of musicians. And there are a lot of musicians I know that are getting out of the industry now, and they're going to start taking on different jobs. So at the end of the pandemic, are we going to have any musicians left? Who's going to play the gigs? This is the question. And during the pandemic, everybody took comfort in online gigs, and there was musicians coming on and they'd play songs, and everyone enjoyed culture and music during the pandemic, but yet it hasn't been respected, and there's no legislation that they plan in to bring into place in order to support musicians. Now, in saying that, there are a few grants recently that they've released. So if you want to record an album, you can apply for a grant at the moment, which is a really nice package they're releasing. That's more so for artists than for bands. But if you're just a guitar player, a session player who plays in Temple Bar on a Friday night, you're still out of work. So there's a lot of people kind of giving out about how the music industry has been left aside while they worry about everything else. They're like, the music industry's fine, we'll just leave it over here and hopefully it'll fix itself, unfortunately.
Okay, so now, first I'd like to ask you, I have a question about Eurovision, but the first one is because you're telling me that you were not sure when your mother asked you to participate on The Voice. You were kind of hesitating. The same with Britain's Got Talent. But why did you do Eurovision? Because many people say Eurovision is a career killer. Okay, so like many people say Eurovision is super negative things about Eurovision in Ireland. People say that Eurovision is something that belongs to the 90s and we should just forget it and then let's move on to something else. So why did you do Eurovision?
So I wrote the song for the artist who performed the year before me. So that song was written for Brendan Murray.
Really?
Yeah. So the song was written a year previous, and then when 2018 came around, the decision makers decided that they liked the song together, but they said, who are we going to get to sing it? And I said, I don't know. I'm not doing it. Yeah, like, don't ask me. I'm not doing it. And then they said, okay, well, let's look for other musicians or other singers who might be able to do it. So we looked for some people, and in the end, I said, you know what? I'll do it, but under one condition. I said, I want to have control over the performance. I want to have control over the way the song is produced.
Good.
How we look, what the message is. I said, I'll do it under those conditions. And they said, okay. So that's why I was able to have 2 male dancers on the stage. And, you know, and I the whole performance and everything. I was able to really get creative on it. And as well, growing up as a kid in Ireland, the Eurovision is the thing. You're allowed to stay up late at night on the Eurovision night, you know, because it's a once in a year event, and we've won it so many times. We still hold the record for the most amount of wins at Eurovision. So it's a cultural thing in Ireland, and I told myself that year, from now on, if an opportunity comes my way, I'm going to take it, because there's life is too short to decide to say no, I'm not going to do this, or no, I'm going to do something else. It's too short. You just gotta grab it by the horns and go for it. So it was a project I was looking forward to kind of getting stuck into, but it was a lot of heartache, and it was pretty difficult. Yeah.
I like your answer.
Nice.
Very
like,
much.
I'm surprised that this song was supposed to be for Brandon, because it's much better than the song that he sang in Eurovision.
Yeah, so Brendan's manager, Louis Walsh, didn't like the song, and they went and they chose a song from a famous songwriter, because if it comes from a famous songwriter, surely it's better. So
Yeah.
that's another reason why. And
Yeah.
that's why the vocal is so high, because Brendan Murray has a much higher range than I do. So I had to go in, I had to sing it at the same key. So that kind of was a lot of my songs. You won't hear me singing that high, but in this song, I do sing that high.
Well, you gave a lot of information about it, more than expected. Okay, so first, how was the environment in Eurovision? Because your participation was surrounded by controversy. So just share about the whole experience. Like, Eurovision usually has some shows before. I know you went to Amsterdam, right? I'm not sure if you went to Spain, just Amsterdam.
I did. I went to Spain as well, yeah.
Okay, so you went to the shows before going to Eurovision. So how was everything? And especially, how did you feel when you were the last one called in the semifinal?
Okay, so when I said I would take on the job and go to Eurovision, I was already confirmed to play a tour in America, in the United States. So I did 9 weeks in the United States at the start of 2018. So it was February, March. So while I was over there, I was coordinating everything back in Ireland for the Eurovision. So I was coordinating the music video, the costume, lighting, performance, the mixing, the engineering, the recording. So I was up late at night. Like, after we perform in a theater in Kansas, I'd be on a Zoom chat or like a FaceTime with people trying to organize these different things. So I came home, And the day after I arrived to Dublin, I was flown off to Amsterdam for the Eurovision pre-party. And then there was Lisbon, Spain. I went to Israel. Where else did we go? I think that might be it. I think there was London. There was a few different shows, like pre-Eurovision parties. So we had the video done, which the powers that be on the Irish delegation, they said, okay, we'll do the video, but if it's not received well, we won't bring it to the stage. And I said, it will be received well, we'll be fine, we'll do it. Some people wanted to have 3 dancers. They wanted 2 guys and a girl, just to make it even, you know? And then at the end, when it became successful, they said, okay, this is great, let's run with it, let's roll. Let's bring them to the stage, let's get snow coming from the roof, you know? So there's all these different ideas started to flow. So it became a really enjoyable project because then everyone was on board. And we had a lot of positive feedback. You know, I was getting messages from kids in Russia being like, thank you so much for having 2 guys in the video. It's allowed me to tell my parents that I'm gay. And, you know, I was getting messages from different people all over the world with a very similar message. So I knew I was doing something right. So the main thing for me doing the Eurovision was, I don't want to just go and sing a song and hope for the best. I'm going to do it. I want a positive message that's going to affect people in some sort of positive way, wherever they are in the world, if they need it, you know? So that was my main target. And then the night of the semi-final, I didn't think that we'd got through. I was really positive all the way up until the 5th name was called, and then the 6th country was called, and then the 7th country was called. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh, I'm like, no. I'm like, we didn't do it. I'm like, no. I accepted defeat. I'm like, I can't go back to Ireland. They're going to hate me. And then my friend, who's a co-writer of the song, my friend Cappy, he put his hand on my shoulder and he says, Ryan, don't give up hope yet. I was like, okay. And next of all, they called Ireland. And we were like, wow, what? This is incredible, you know? So then we made it into the final and we celebrated the night of the semi-final. We celebrated like we won it. We celebrated like we won the whole competition.
Yeah, actually, there's a quote here that was published in Irish Times, and I used this quote in my article, and I think it's amazing because Patrick Frayne, he said, for most of us, that 5-year absence was worse than the 800 years of oppression.
That's crazy.
I mean,
I wouldn't agree with him. 800 years of oppression is a lot worse.
For sure, but like it was very surprising, and it was a very good surprise. It was a good song. It deserved to qualify.
Yeah, thank you.
So now I would like to talk about Mango TV because they censored your performance. How did you feel about that? Because they censored your performance and also the Albanian singer because of his tattoos, right?
Yeah. So I think it was the first year that Eurovision was broadcast in China, if I'm not mistaken. So Mango TV took on the rights, and I don't think they understood the rules of the competition, which is you got to show all performances start to finish, and you can't edit, you can't get involved with the edit of them at all. So when I heard that they had blurred out the pride flags during my performance, I said yes. This means that we've done something right. That, you know, a mainly communist country will blur out the flags in order to prevent, you know, some kids from seeing them and maybe opening their minds and stuff like that. But what we did, we made that happen. So we made a little bit of a change there in the whole world in order, you know, and so when I heard it, I said, that's it. I said, we've succeeded. I said, we've done something right. Also, something that isn't really well documented is the Russian TV. They actually hosted, on the night of the semi-final, they hosted like a commemorative event for their army, which meant that my performance would be pushed back to after the watershed. And they haven't done that in previous years. So I'd like to think that it was because of the performance, similar to Mango TV, that they hosted this commemorative event for the army in order to not have to show our performance while children are awake. You know? So I'd like to think that we affected two major superpowers with our performance at Eurovision.
Yeah, you surely did. But I have two questions now. The first one's about Leslie Roy. It seems that she's going to the same path that you have started. And also, would you do Eurovision again? At least as a songwriter, maybe?
Yeah, I'd love to get involved again. The atmosphere at Eurovision is incredible. Everyone is just really supportive of each other, all the different countries, all the delegations. I made so many friends. It's a really, really positive atmosphere to be in as a creative and as someone in the entertainment industry, you know? I wasn't expecting it to be so much fun, and it was. So I'd definitely be up for getting involved again in some form or another, whether it be working with the delegation or as a performer or as a songwriter or as whatever it is. I'd like to get involved again, yeah.
Okay, good. So I have another question here because it's about you being a composer, because you said that you like to compose your music. And you've been to South America, you were here, you have been here for a long time, right? For 6 months, that's quite a lot. But the question is, are you planning to compose anything about this journey?
Well, I released one song in March or April, and it's called Lucky One.
Yes.
And the music video for the song is all footage from my journey throughout South America. So unfortunately, I never made it to Brazil, but I did get through. I went from Colombia in through Ecuador into Peru, which was a once in a lifetime journey, especially before COVID. You know, it'd be very difficult to have a journey like that ever again, I think. So for me, it was I got away from my world for a while, and then I was able to come back to it with a fresh ears, and I wrote that song Lucky One because it describes how lucky I am to be able to do these things in my life and to have the job that I have that allows me the freedom to explore our beautiful world, you know? So that's one song. But yeah, I've taken influence, I think, from my different experiences that I've had. So those different experiences that I had in South America, which every single one of them is an individual story that could be an individual song. So yeah, but I'd also like to go back and obviously visit Brazil and Argentina, and Chile. Yeah, they're definitely on my list.
Okay. So this is my last question. You also released Permanent. And what are your plans for the future? Because it feels that this is like a question that I usually ask myself when it comes to music nowadays. Some artists, they have like 10, 11 singles, but they do not release an album. And this is, I keep asking myself why. This is one question. And the other question is, what are your plans for the future? Do you plan to release a second album? Because you do have an album, but it would be, you have some singles, but I'm not sure if you're planning to create a second album.
Okay, so this is a very good question, because with music at the moment, the attention span of a human being is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point where we go onto our phone and we scroll and we're like, okay, boom, boom, next. It's getting faster and faster. that's the reason primarily why people are creating singles as opposed to albums, because it's hard to get someone to listen to the second song on an album, never mind the fifth or the sixth song. So for me, it's something that I'll still continue to do. I'm going to work on an album of sorts, but at the moment, I've just released a few singles. I have a new single coming out on the 15th of October. So that's in maybe 2 weeks. And that's going to be the last of the string of like 3 singles this year. But I started a project at the start of the year where it's called Live Off the Floor, where I record 3 songs completely live in a studio and with one camera. And I think that encapsulates the real performance element to my music. And I try to bring as many people together for these songs. So I've released 2 of those so far this year, and I hope to do one more maybe around Christmas time. So yeah, that's kind of the reasoning why people don't go for albums anymore, and it's more so singles, which is really unfortunate, because I think you obviously like listening to albums. I like listening to albums. So yeah, it's unfortunate. So I'll work on, just for you, Senor. I'll work on an album and I'll get it out.
Ask Laura Elizabeth Hughes to do one too.
Yeah, I will. Don't worry. I'll call her after this interview.
Okay. Yeah, she
finished. Thank
Yeah,
you,
now we have
Sonia,
some
for
questions.
your participation and contribution with your questions. Thank you, Ryan, for your answers. Believe us that we are going to listen again to your answers and Sonia's questions, discuss about them, because as I said in the beginning, the more we get in touch with Irish culture, Irish writers, artists, the more we understand your way of being, your culture, your contemporary, your time, the time you are living.
I think it's brilliant that you take an interest in Irish music and Irish culture. I'm really grateful for that. So thank you.
No, thank you. We have just a few questions from the audience.
Yeah.
Before the audience, Sanyo, okay. I have a question because today I was reading the Irish Times, and I could see that they publish an essay on the book written by a Washington, D.C.-based journalist, Casey Ray, on William Burroughs and the Cult of Rock and Roll, a book that maps the Naked Lunch author influence on generations of rock musicians. I have a question. Do you think your compositions are influenced by Burroughs?
To be honest, I don't know who Burroughs is. I need to really discover a little bit more about them. So
it's a bit controversial, but yes, it's today in today's Irish Times.
Okay, I'll give that article a read, but I don't know, because I'd have to be more familiar with him.
Okay, you have already answered. So let's see the questions from the audience.
Okay, so we have a question from Laura. Okay.
Okay, so what have you been listening to lately? Would you recommend some new Irish artists? I've been listening to the 1975, and I know they're not Irish, but I think they're a really good band. Actually, you know what? Let me have a look at my device here, and I'll see exactly what I've been listening to, and I'll be able to recommend something. Okay, what do we have? So I have a playlist called Hindsight 2020 on my Spotify channel, and I'm listening to James Vincent McMorrow, who's an amazing Irish artist. If you haven't checked him out before, check him out, James Vincent McMorrow. He's a song called Headlights, which is amazing. I've been listening to Glass Animals, which are another. I'm very fond of that band. I'm listening again to Mac Miller, who's like a hip hop artist from the States. A lot of my music that I listen to is probably not representative of the music that I play, which is quite interesting, right? But yeah, Liana Lehavis has a great new album. I think Sanyo, you'd really like that.
Really?
Yeah, her name is Liana Lehavis. She's got her album is really beautiful. But yeah, if anyone wants to hear what I'm listening to, they can go onto my Spotify and they can look at my playlist, and it's called Hindsight 2020.
Okay. So there's another question also from Lara. She's one of the researchers that studies hip hop.
Okay. So socially and politically wise, how would you analyze the impact of music in Ireland? Social transformation has it been portrayed? Okay, so I think I think music in general always has an effect on the culture and the social scenarios, social situations. In Ireland at the moment, I think hip hop is having a big influence. And there's a lot of young politicians as well who would be supportive of this hip hop movement in Ireland. There's a new wave of politics in Ireland as well. The Sinn Féin is coming through with a lot of new young candidates who would have associated with a lot of these hip hop groups. The group from Belfast that you need to listen to, Sanyo, and to Lara, is probably Kneecap. I don't know. She know this group. They're called Kneecap, and all their performances are Oscuelga. So they're very interesting to listen to.
Okay. There's another question here from Manuel.
Yeah, I think throughout my life, I've usually stepped away from music and gone traveling, and then I come back to music and I write some songs. So in a special way, I think my travels in South America gave me a real appreciation for how lucky I really am as a human being. Firstly, to be alive in this beautiful world, and also to have the job that I have to offer me the freedom. So I think it's something I kind of took for granted before my trips to Latin America. Also, the people I met along the way just like opened their hearts and doors open to me, and I think that's given me a real fond depiction of humanity and how people are so nice wherever you go in the world. You'll always come across nice, good people. I think good people always attract good people. So I think that's another thing, a special thing that I've taken from my travels. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question here by Fernando too.
Okay, so Permanent was written for, I had a friend of mine, when I was in Peru last year, I got the word that a friend of mine had died by suicide here in Ireland. And I wanted to write a song just to remember him by. And I had the idea that nothing is a little bit permanent. It's either permanent or it's not. So that was kind of the idea behind the song. And then the lyrics just tell the story of how I found out, what the repercussions are going to be in the future, and how, you know, when you're gone, and there's nothing you can really do about that. That's another thing about Ireland at the moment, actually. We may have this pandemic that's, you know, COVID-19, but there's also another pandemic, and I think it's a global pandemic as well, which is suicide and mental health problems.
Yes.
That's definitely a huge issue that isn't really being addressed on the scale that it probably should be. So you know, we can talk about COVID-19 all day long, but there's a real pandemic underneath that, which is suicide, and unfortunately, it's in males in and around my age bracket. People feeling like they're maybe disenfranchised and don't have a place in the world. So that's kind of what that song is about, and I put it out so it might help people who are in a similar grieving scenario that might need it. So.
Okay, we have another question here. Only two more questions, okay?
Okay.
This one.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Marcus. So I did receive not that many, but I received some death threats after after the performance of Together, because you know it was a two guys in the video, so a lot of there was a lot of homophobic things directed at me, and as a straight man performing a song for like the gay community, it was, I think not many people have done that before, you know. So I kind of felt a little bit of the homophobia that a lot of gay people might feel in the world. So for me, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit, and it made me more. It did, Marcus. It made me a little bit more wanting to make more of a positive change. And it didn't really scare me too much. People can talk a lot of shit online, and you know you gotta just take it on the chin and not really take heed to it.
Okay. The last question.
Okay, so I actually went out with a Brazilian girl probably about 6 or 7 years ago, because you know a lot of Brazilian people living in Dublin and living in Ireland.
Yes, back to
Yeah, so I was brought out for good food. We went and we danced to good music. So I think somewhere in the back of my mind, it was like rhythm, and the rhythm of Brazilian music is definitely somewhere in my heart. And I think sometimes when I put on music and I get a song and I come across a Brazilian artist, it kind of brings me back to a nice place in my head. So I definitely do have a lot of respect, and I don't know if I've used it enough as an influence in my own music, but maybe in the future.
Okay, people are thanking your answers. Thank you very much, Ryan. It was very. I'm breathless. I'm speechless. It's such a good interview.
Speechless.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. The pair of you guys, it was an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Yes, I can feel how happy they are, Ryan, because
Nice.
we have been talking about you before this opportunity. So since Tanya went to Eurovision, he has talked about you.
Nice.
About the Eurovision. They love songs, and I'm not a singer, but I have a daughter who is a singer. So I am in this environment of young people singing, young people loving songs. So thank you very much for this great opportunity of having you here, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience. So I hope you can meet again, not online anymore, but in Ireland, to be in your show with Sanyo. This is what we are planning to do.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love that. And
Lara and Sanyo are planning to go with me to Ireland as soon as pandemic finishes.
Oh, well, you gotta let me know if you're here. If you're here, my home is your home.
Oh, thank you very much. By the way, what's your star sign? I'm very curious.
Libra.
Libra, like Sanyo. When?
There you go. We're about the balance.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when in October or?
My birthday was Sunday. Sunday just gone.
Next Sunday.
Sunday passed.
Sunday passed. Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, so my heartful thanks go now to you. Yes, we are very happy in having you here. Thank you very much for this great contribution. So ABEI members and my group of researchers say thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you in Ireland.
See you.
See you. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.